Hello everyone, I'm Pinky Girl, and don't be alarmed. This is a new look I'm trying out for myself. No need to worry about it. So, in case you haven't realized, this is the first time you guys get to hear my voice. Unless you're one of my way earlier subscribers that saw my earlier videos that are gone now, in case you're wondering. Wait, what earlier vid? Hey, look, we got a word from our sponsor! You guys may have heard about amino apps, more specifically the FNAF amino app. If you haven't, then here's a little rundown. The FNAF Amino app is a community-based app based around, well, FNAF. You can see what other users are posting, such as tons of fan art and stories, both popular and recently. You can also partake in quizzes and chat with other users in public chat rooms as well. I got the app a long time ago and I found it very enjoyable, especially seeing tons of fan artwork I have never seen before. If you want to be a part of an awesome community, I suggest downloading this app, and heck, you can even follow me there as well. You can download the FNAF Amino app in the description below for both iOS and Android users. Now that that's out of the way, let's get on to the point of this video. In today's video, I'm going to discuss about how I create pages for my FNAF sister location comic and Animatronic's Demise. You guys may have came across a particular hamster who I allowed to do a comic dub. Otherwise, you may have seen it on my DeviantArt. I wanted to share how I plan out and make my pages, especially for those who are curious to know. So I'll be showing the process of creating 2 pages of the comic. Now I do want to mention something before we start, that these 2 pages contain spoilers for the comic. While they aren't too major at this point, believe me, you guys haven't seen what's yet to come. Unless I've already finished the comic, then you probably already knew what happened at the end. But regardless, I highly suggest that you read the comic from the beginning until you are all caught up with the story. I'll also leave timestamps of each stage of the process in case you want to jump to a particular part of the video, as well as a Q&A at the end about the comic. Without further ado, let's begin. I can't really go too much into detail with the concept behind it because 1, the comic's not finished yet, and 2, this comic is based off of a game. But I can't say that at the moment because I'm currently hosting a little contest on DeviantArt to see which 3 people can guess what game this comic is based off of. While all 3 winners are already chosen, and I may or may not have lost one in the process, I do want to keep the game a secret until the end of the comic where I announce the winners. So if you already know the title of the game, then please keep it to yourself until I leave an update via a comment down below to allow you guys to talk about the game that inspired this comic. It's also worth mentioning that this comic is not canon to Sister Location or the entirety of the FNAF lore in any way. It was just a little fun and interesting idea I had in mind. Now let's move on to the planning stages of the comic. Originally, I would have the page layout idea in my head, but I've realized that I got to have the layout on paper before I forget over time. So one day in college, I've decided to roughly sketch out how each page is laid out, and to also plan out how many pages I have to make in total. The layout pages have basic shapes to distinguish where the characters are going to be placed, as well as the text and how each panel is shaped. I don't scan these rough layouts, mostly because of the crookedness of the straight lines for the page. Plus, there might be some changes in terms of positioning characters. I only used it as a guide to help set up the page on Paint Tool Sci. I also had to make a script to see which characters say what in each page, because while I was writing the dialogue for a page, I forgot what one of the characters said in one panel. So now I have this script to help me keep track of what the dialogue is for each character. After setting up the layout of the page, I draw a rough sketch that will be later used to create the actual line work. The rough includes the characters, the backgrounds, and the dialogue of each page. This usually takes the longest to do, mostly because of the thought process of how exactly you want a panel to turn out, which would result in making changes either before or during the line work phase. In this case, Circus Baby's mouth in the last panel of page 19 was changed multiple times because I wasn't sure how to convey her emotion in the panel, but I eventually made the final change during the line work phase. Since these phases are the longest, I didn't record the process, mostly because it gets really repetitive and boring when I try to perfect a simple line multiple times, which is also why I never show the rough and line work processes during speed paints. Alright, so you may have seen my previous speed paints where I showed you how I color and change my drawings. I simply use the magic wand tool to select the areas I want to color, and use the select tool to, well, select the smaller sections that weren't picked up from the magic wand. Then I fill it in with the bucket. I create a shade layer on top of the color and reduce its opacity to a certain amount, which depends on what the main color is, and then I start to shade. I do this with one color at a time, and while it does take a while to do, I feel it's very helpful in my case, but I may try a different technique in the near future. I do want to say a word of advice to those who want to try this technique to be absolutely positive that you are happy with the results of the shading for one color, because once you merge it with the other colors, it would be very difficult to fix it afterwards. This actually happened when I was shading Baby's face in the first panel. I've realized the shading was too light, so I had to go back and fix it off camera. Since I have a lot of footage of the coloring/shading process, I'm going to discuss a bit about the characters' designs and some interesting facts about them. Believe it or not, this comic was how I introduced my first ever design of Circus Baby on DeviantArt, besides some earlier drawings, of course. Circus Baby's design was experimental, especially since this comic was being made during the time before Sister Location was released, where people had to rely on any sort of teaser or the trailer to get the characters' designs to be as close as possible to the in-game designs. In my case, I was nearly close to what Baby's actual design was. In this comic, Baby's stomach area is a bit different, but still had the same fan in the middle. The shoes were basic black shoes, and the design of the sleeves were different. I've decided to keep Baby's old design for the comic and use Baby's new design for my other drawings. Throughout the earlier pages of the comic, I was testing out different pigtail shapes on Circus Baby, and looking back now, I didn't really like how her pigtails were drawn so oddly than the ones I'm used to drawing. So both of these designs go all the way back to the early eras of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Back then, I was experimenting how I wanted Shadow Bonnie's design to be like, but I eventually found a style and stuck to it until recently. Now I'm trying a different head shape and ear sizes to make it not so stiff. I'm even still testing out different ways of showing facial expressions with the teeth in both shadows. What's strange is that I have drawn Shadow Bonnie more times than I did with Shadow Freddy, so his design was still in its experimenting stage, but I do like his current design for the comic. There's really not much else to say about their designs without spoiling anything, except they were meant to look like ghostly figures because, well, they're shadows, but you already knew that already. The backgrounds are pretty simple to make, mostly because the characters take up the majority of the page. In earlier pages, I've made background show parts of the supposed office area, but as the pages go on, I've only shown the bare walls and sometimes the door. I do have to admit that I wish I would have some better way to fill the blank walls with something, but at the same time, I feel as though the characters in the main conflict should be mainly focused here. Maybe in future comics I'll try to have some interesting backgrounds involved. The process of coloring and changing the backgrounds is the same for the characters, so I'm not going to explain it here. After finishing the backgrounds, I add in other effects like the darkness, which is intentional for the sake of this comic, and the eye glow for Baby and the shadows. The darkness is made by simply selecting the panels, filling it with black, and lowering the opacity. The eye glow has a similar process, but instead I changed the layer setting to luminosity to give a better glow. I was originally planning to add glow to their teeth, which you can see here, but I felt like the glow around the eyes is just enough without going overboard. I also add motion sound text like the snap of the key card and the slash of the utility knife. If there are any other effects besides the ones I've already mentioned, I would add them now before moving on to the final step. The last step is to add the dialogue to the panels. All the dialogue is handwritten with slight variations to them. While Circus Baby's is normal, the Shadow's dialogue is a bit different. I wanted to have a scratchy feel for the Shadow's dialogue, but the way I've used to do it is by making repeated stroke lines to form the letters, and I soon learned that it was a bit tedious. So I decided to tackle it in a different way. From what you can see here in the video, I've decided to write the letters in a squiggle motion, or something like that. I'm not really sure what to call it, but it made writing the Shadow's dialogue a lot easier while still having that scratchy sort of feel in the text. The text bubbles are made by drawing the bubbles and then lowering the opacity to the right amount, while the shadows have that same squiggly motion I've mentioned earlier, with no change with opacity. After that, I look over the entire page for any errors that need to be fixed or something that needed to be changed. Once that's done, I save the page as a PNG file, and now it's ready to be uploaded for you guys to see. Now that you guys know how I make my comic, I will be answering a few questions I have received over the course of the comic series, and a few other questions that others may have in mind or not fully addressed in this video. Or if you skipped all the way to the questions, and you just, want to see answers. How long is this comic? Or how many pages are there in total? I've planned out every page in this comic, so expect to be around 30 pages total. What program did you use to create the comic? I used Paint Tool Sci to create the comics. It's very useful in terms of making straight lines for the panels and other stuff. Do you have a schedule of when each page is uploaded? I do not, unfortunately, and even though I'm in summer vacation currently, I still have other drawings and real-life responsibilities to do. I will try to get out each page the best I can, so all I can say is to be patient. Can I make a comic dub using your comics? Absolutely! I would really love to see it as well. I mean, I let Pete the Hamster do it, so you can too. If you want, you can link me to the finished video through DeviantArt by either a comment or a note. I do suggest not linking me the video through YouTube, because there may be a slight chance that I might miss it. Is the contest you mentioned earlier still opened? Currently, it is closed, and I already picked my 3 winners. Although you guys could play along without giving away your answers. Throughout a few pages, I left hints in italics about the game that this comic is based off of. Like this one. The game's side character and baby have similar traits, and not to mention dialogue. Some dialogue lines here are similar to the game. There's more hints similar to that, so be on the lookout for those in the descriptions of the pages. Are the shadows the main villains of the comic? All I can say is yes and no. You have to watch and find out because I don't do spoilers. Sorry. If there are any questions that you have in mind that I didn't answer in the video, then feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will try to answer the best I can. I will not reveal the rest of the comic series though, so no asking for spoilers. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. I will make more videos that will have commentary in the near future, so if you guys want to see more videos where I talk over them, then let me know in the comments below. I hope this video was interesting for you guys, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye everyone! So now I have a script to keep me track of my lines including, because I can't even remember.